Minnesota Twins top prospects here on the call up today. It's Wednesday, February 12th. You've got me, Aram Layton, and Jack McMullen here. This is another farm system with some names that we've talked about plenty at the top, like a Walker Jenkins and an Emmanuel Rodriguez, but I do think the conversation around them is actually a little bit different, and I'm excited to follow up with those two, but also a system with so many arms that are similar, and I know you saw a good few of them, and we're going to have some interesting conversation on some arms in the back of the top 10. Yeah. We talk about themes through systems as well. There are a lot of themes through this system, especially on the pitching side. Yeah. They love their generic kitchen sink type of guys. And also, whatever happened in 2024, they made it very clear that they wanted all of their pitchers to try to throw a cutter. Mm-hmm. And that helped a lot of guys. It can't hurt, but there clearly was this cutter revolution across the Twins organization. But I do think it actually helped some of the kitchen sink guys. So I'm excited to try to decipher the differences here between some of the similar types of prospects. But then, of course, you have some unique players mixed in there as well.
It's a unique organization right now because they have 3 top 100 prospects, but 2 are top 10 prospects. Yep. So you go a long way with just like one tier 2, tier 3 guy, and then you get to guys that are outside the top 100. I will also say it was just a weird offseason for the Minnesota Twins in general because you had the exploration of sale of the team, and then you also had, like a team functioning seemingly cash strapped.
Yeah.
But they as constructed, can absolutely win that division and go to the postseason and make a run. Problem is, they lead the league in IL stints pretty much every year. They have guys that are hurt all of the time, and their 2 top 10 prospects have dealt with the injury bug so far in their minor league careers. So it's like, did they need to do anything this offseason? No. But is it still kind of discouraging because you feel like a lot of these guys are going to play 110 games? Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Yeah, and they kind of waited, and I think they had a very slim budget, just waited for whatever kind of fell into their lap at the end of the free agency cycle, and they grab a Harrison Bader, who I do love as an insurance policy, right? And a Ty France to one last little bounce back opportunity for him. But on the pitching side, I do think they have a ton of options from a depth perspective, and maybe they move a Chris Paddock ultimately. Maybe they don't want to sell low just yet. But that is a guy that is owed, a decent chunk of change. And you look at all of the arms that we're going to be talking about, a good portion of them are ready to contribute at the big league level, or at least very close to it. And then that's not even including the prospects that graduated by our standards, like a Zebby Matthews, who, eclipsed that 30-inning threshold. So he's not ranked for us, but that's a guy that could very easily fit into the equation of that rotation as well. And, has shown that he has nothing left to prove in the minor leagues. He's just got to figure out how to get more swings and misses at the big league level because it's command over everything, like a lot of these other guys. But then you have a David Festa as well, who I thought showed some really good flashes. No longer a prospect, but a guy that is young and at the present moment squeezed out of the rotation. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Twins still end up making some moves in spring training time when, unfortunately other teams will see pitchers go down, or you never know what happens with your big league team. You don't want to trim too much because all of a sudden pitching depth can become thin quite quickly. But it just does feel like Chris Paddock might be that odd man out here when you have a Zebby Matthews ready right there and you have a David Festa. Maybe they roll with a 6-man rotation with some of the injuries that they've dealt with. But they definitely are in a good spot from a pitching perspective, I think. Assuming Joe Ryan is healthy, and that seems like all indications point towards them keeping Pablo Lopez. And Uber is a guy that I think you can very much count on at this point to do what he does.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's 3 years of control of Pablo Lopez. It's 3 more years of control of Joe Ryan and Bailey Ober. And then you got Simeon Woods Richardson, who's also pre-arb. You got Louis Varland. We'll see what happens. He's also pre-arb. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here that's positive for the Twins pitching wise, but they've got even more coming. Paddock, you really want to pay him $7.5? I understand you'd be selling low right now, but you get out from under $7.5 million and you clear up space for somebody who could just be flat out better on opening day.
Yeah, 100%, and probably more available. And I do think a Festa could definitely be better. Zebby will definitely give you more innings, or most likely give you more innings. The last note before we get into the names to watch that I wanted to just mention as well is, in terms of talent under 25 years old, or under 26 years old in this instance, We talk about prospects and prospect rankings, and that's always great. But sometimes it doesn't provide the entire picture because you have organizations that just graduated a couple really, really talented prospects, but they're guys that are just getting their feet wet still at the MLB level. And I look at the Twins, not quite fully in that regard, but there are still several players that are looking to get their footing that are good, valuable pieces, that are under the age of 27 years old, 26 years old, like a Royce Lewis. You assume, that the goal is to obviously just stay healthy, but a Royce Lewis is still not even 26 years old. A Jose Miranda is not even 27 years old. Brooks Lee is just turned 24. So still a lot of fun young talent. You're just hoping that they could stay healthy. And we'll talk about him, but I love their Rule 5 pickup in Eiberson Castellano, probably one of the highest rankings we've had of a player in a team top prospect list after getting selected in the Rule 5 draft.
Yeah, and you want Edouard Julien to bounce back in a good way, and Julien's 26 years old. And then don't forget Austin Martin, who actually looks like a big league utility piece, who's 26 years old. Like, there's a lot of mid-20s. There's a lot of pre-arb talent on this team. It's just a matter of filling in the gaps, and they've got 2 outfielders of the future, and we'll see what Keaschall can be, and we'll see what the pitchers can be.
Absolutely, and we'll get to those guys that still have the prospect eligibility, but we'll start with the names to watch. And there was a bit of a conversation at the 15, 16, 17 range, like a couple players here that just got squeezed out. Depending on who you ask in the industry, the first name that we're going to talk about here is still a borderline top 15 guy in the system to a lot of people. For us, probably a little bit too much swing and miss, but still, has the talent to be, an everyday big leaguer.
Too much swing and miss, but he hits the ball really hard, and he can play a decent corner outfield. Kaelen Rosario missed some time with injury in 2024, but he made it up at the Arizona Fall League, and he OPS'd over 800 at the Arizona Fall League. He had 21 homers in 2023 as a young guy. He was a high school pick. He was a Hawaiian high school pick in that COVID-shortened 2020 draft. He is Rule 5 eligible. He was Rule 5 eligible this past year, but he was just too far off, especially with the injury. Nobody was going to even think about it, especially with, the swing and miss issues that you saw at the AA level. So it's a matter of shoring that up and letting the power eat a little bit more. And I think he may actually get a little bit better in AAA, where guys are just more around the zone.
Well, especially because of how selective he is, right? I mean, swing and miss is the issue, not as much chase. He ran a chase rate below 20%. And that's a theme through the system, too. You can tell the Twins very much value swing decisions. 90th percentile exit velocity of 108 miles per hour. Like, it's better than plus raw power, but he's got to get the ball in the air and he's got to hit it more consistently.
Mm-hmm. Ricardo Olivar is next, and he is one of the very few that I think could actually catch and play a corner outfield spot at the major league level. Like, it feels like there's a guy in every system that it's like, oh, he could do the Varsho thing defensively where he can catch and he can play left. Nobody's going to be Varsho because Varsho is a Gold Glove corner outfielder and can be a Gold Glove center fielder. But the conversation around Dylan Dingler in Detroit or Harry Ford in Seattle or Endy Rodriguez in Pittsburgh, it's probably not going to materialize. It could materialize for Olivar, who's playing a lot of corner outfield. OPS over 920 against lefties. He seems like a short end of the platoon guy, and that's awesome for a guy that signed for $20K.
Yeah, and I think the defense behind the dish is not good enough to have him there regularly. So if that's a guy that's kind of playing as the alternate catcher, filling in there, especially when you like the matchups, and then if he's really hitting, especially against lefties, you stick him in left. It seems like it could be a unique bench piece, platoon piece for sure. And, another guy that hits the ball hard and the underlying data looks pretty good. I mean, it's kind of a question of, how valuable is it to be kind of at catcher and left field? But I guess if you're hitting and you're still able to be good enough to get by at both those spots, there could be some value there.
Yeah, probably. Like I'm thinking, okay, you grade out, if you grade out decently at both those spots, grades out decently at both those spots, like there is some value. Yasser Mercedes is next, who got to low A at the end of the year. I'm sure he was in contention for 16 because you can attribute the down year in 2023 to a shoulder issue, but it is tough bouncing back from a shoulder issue. We got $1.7 million in the 22 cycle. He was awesome. 41 games, 30 bags, and 975 OPS in the DSL. Then he comes over, shoulder issue, struggles at the complex. Then the shoulder gets right in 24. he looks awesome before getting to low A for the final 2 weeks. So he's a speed demon. You probably want to see the power progress a little bit more, and maybe a year removed from a shoulder issue that could help.
Yeah, this is still a guy that I think has the tools to very easily play his way into the top 15 here, and definitely got some consideration. And just spending most of the time at the complex there, I would have liked to maybe see him play his way off there a bit earlier. I mean, obviously they wanted to probably take it slow coming off the injury and have him build some more consistent success. But there's a really intriguing power speed combination here, and another guy that runs a sub 20% chase rate. Like, that's going to be a recurring point brought up here on the show. But the interesting thing is, patience is not always great swing decisions. And I think that's where Mercedes is also still trying to balance that, where just because you're not chasing very much doesn't mean that you're always putting yourself in a good spot. If you take a fastball down the middle, but then you lay off of, a slider that was 2 inches off the plate, did you give yourself, an advantage there? No, you hedged maybe a mistake, but it's kind of a wash. So it just through that lens, like, he's still feeling those things out. But I am excited to see what it can look like at low A. I want to see it at low A a little bit more because there's been some swing and miss.
Got you. Corey Lewis is not a knuckleballer. He is a pitcher that throws a knuckleball. He's a kitchen sink guy with a knuckleball in there as well. He's a big dude. He's like 6'5", 220. The fastball's okay, but he's got like a big 12-6 type curveball, sporadic knuckle. He's been really good so far in the minor leagues, but he missed some time with shoulder impingement, which, like, that's probably concerning, and that's probably what kept him out of the top 15, right?
Yeah, especially when you're averaging about 90.3 miles per hour in the fastball, because it's like, if that shoulder is not feeling right and you drop to 88, 89, like, it's going to be really hard to succeed that way. It is impressive that he has been able to make it work at 90. And I think a big part of that has been, the breaking ball and the knuckle that he mixes in a good deal. I mean, throws it 18% of the time, and it's a good, really good pitch for him. It's hard to project that all out. But the fact that he lands his knuckleball for a strike at 65% of the time is pretty amazing. It's just very high over the top release that I do think will get hit harder at the big league level and even at the AAA level. But he does seem like a solid depth arm, and maybe, as he gets healthy and further away from that impingement, he can creep back up to, 92, and we can see a little bit more success, but he's never really been there. And that's the interesting thing, is like at Santa Barbara, he was upper 80s. First full pro season, he was probably a little bit harder, averaging maybe a half tick higher.
Yeah.
But there were some starts this past year where he was averaging 89.5, and it's hard to succeed that way.
Yeah. 28-year-old name to watch. He'll turn 28 in May. Deshaun Kersey Jr. He's a guy that has frustrated me at points, but he's really tooled out. Hit 314 bombs, still 36 bags in AAA. Got his first taste of the big leagues. He does not graduate by our standards in terms of number of plate appearances at the major league level, but he probably should be on the major league roster. And if you're a big leaguer on opening day, then you are a name to consider.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a great bench option and a great fourth outfielder option, especially if you deploy him against righties, where against righties, including his big league stint, like 305, 359, 500 slash line. I mean, that's going to play. What's interesting is, 12 of his 15 home runs against righties. So, I mean, if you use him as like a fourth outfielder, but a little bit more than that, a guy that you can put in platoon situations. Yeah. Obviously, they don't really need a left-handed hitting side of the platoon too much in the outfield, and that's probably part of the challenge. He could end up becoming trade bait as well, because I think there's probably plenty of teams out there that would love a defender who could go get it and give you value on the base paths and can surprise with enough pop, here and there, especially to the pull side. Like, I do like him as a fourth outfielder. I don't know how he fits onto this roster necessarily, especially with the acquisition of Bader. Yeah. I know Bader's a righty, but they needed a righty to kind of spell the lefties, I feel like, to a degree. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in.
Let me know if this is too novel and revolutionary, but he could be a late game defensive replacement or pinch runner. Like, he kind of seems like that in Minnesota, or he's trade bait.
Yeah, exactly.
So, by the way, that was a joke. We're going to get back to that at some point because baseball is very cyclical. Is it Dason or Dasan Hill?
I don't know. We probably should know that.
He hasn't thrown yet, so like it's not like I've been able to listen to anybody like call a game and say his name. So We have no idea. What we do know is that he signed for $2 million to pull him away from a Dallas Baptist commitment. He was Minnesota's Comp B pick at number 69 overall this past year. He's 6'5". When he signed, he was 165 pounds at 6'5". So I will dream on low 90s, ticking into the mid 90s. And it's a pair of breaking balls too. I really know next to nothing about Dason Desan Hill, but the projection is exciting enough, I guess.
Yeah, I just haven't seen enough to push him into that top 15. What I was able to see too is there's a fair amount of effort in the delivery, kind of like yanks the head a good bit, and I want to see a little bit more, and just see what it looks like when we have some more data available, and just see the quality of the breaking stuff. So it's more of just a wait and see. But I didn't love the delivery, so that did give me some pause. But if the stuff looks like it needs to look, then you can start to overlook the delivery to a degree as well, just kind of waiting to see that.
Yeah. Gabriel Gonzalez had one of the more underwhelming seasons in the 2024 minor league campaign, regardless of organization, to be honest, because this was the guy that was getting some back end top 100 love. And then he shows up and OPS is 706 and hit 4 homers this past year. He hit 18 in 116 games. He just turned 21 years old, but he's not a threat on the base paths. He's not great defensively. He needs to hit for power, and he just didn't in 2024.
Yeah, we talked about it. I think the last time we broke down the Twin system, and I feel like I'm being harsh, but I don't see the top 100 love. And you could see the hitting ability, like you could see that there's a good feel for the barrel, and there's at times that the power that'll reveal itself when he squares things up, but the defense was a really tough watch. And often looked like, kind of checked out in the corner outfield spots. And then, the approach got a little bit better, but it still has never been an asset to him. And the exit velocities have never completely been there really either. He just was, for whatever reason, able to, it wasn't even the most hitter friendly environments, even at the lower levels when he was in the Mariners work, but for whatever reason, he was able to make it work. And I think probably outslugged the EVs more than he really even could from a sustainability standpoint. Now we've kind of seen the challenges rear their head, but when you're not providing a ton of defensive value, he's really got to mash. And we did the opposite of that last year.
Yep. Kyle DeBarge had to be close to the top 15.
Mm-hmm.
He was 33rd overall pick this past year, hit 356 with 1117 OPS at Louisiana Lafayette. He had more extra base hits than strikeouts, which you always love to see. It was 43 extra base hits and 30 punchouts. He's 5'9", 175. Hit 21 homers in 62 games. Is he a metal merchant?
A little bit. I don't know what the exact dimensions are of where the Raging Cajuns call home, but I'd imagine that it's fairly hitter friendly to the pull side, because he did a good job of just getting it up in the air to the pull side. But I do wonder if a lot of those home runs are actually going to get out, professionally. Like there's a fair amount of 93, 96, 97, 98 mile per hour home runs to the pull side that snuck their way out. That is an asset for sure. And that will translate to a degree. But even with Wood, he ran a 90th percentile exit velocity, or excuse me, with Metal, he ran a 90th percentile exit velocity of about 102 miles per hour. So if that drops as you'd expect by about 2 ticks, and I think that's conservative, he's going to have to really, really hit. He might be able to. I mean, he's posted really good contact rates and he flashed some good things in his pro debut, but I think you're looking at well below average power probably with Wood. So he's going to have to really, really hit. He's probably, just a second baseman long term as well. So those are all the things that held him back. Those are the types of players you kind of have to see them do it a little bit more. Yeah. But he's clearly got that speedster, dynamic, just grinder type of game that with the hit tool leading the way that the Twins have kind of leaned into the last few years. And, I think if he puts up some good numbers in high A, he could very easily be climbing up this list.
Yeah. Good news is he doesn't punch out. Good news is he swipes bags. So there's value here, even if the power doesn't eat the way it did in college.
Exactly. I know people are excited about Tanner Schobel and he has the bat to ball skills, but I think the lack of athleticism beyond that and value beyond that it's kind of caused him to stall out and not even be a name that we're talking about here. And that the hope is that DeBarge gives you enough in other areas to not have that trajectory.
Yep. Two more. Adrian Bojorquez is a name that I came across for the first time doing this. 19-year-old was up to 94. He experienced like an uptick in velo, and he was really good at the complex, and he turned that into 8 hits allowed in 16 innings in low A. He K'd 21. So, like, he was mixing really well. It was a slider cutter combination off of the fastball where he was 94. But, dude, like, I don't know. It seems like he has a mix that could be in a bullpen, but like there's still plenty of time. Again, he's 19 years old. He can figure it out as a back end arm.
Well, especially with the uptick, as you mentioned, right? He averaged like 92 miles per hour in 2023 in limited action. And then he averaged 94.3 on the fastball this past season. And then the cutter slider combo is really interesting. He's mixed in a curveball that he just can't command quite well yet, but he's also mixed in a changeup that flashes like a very solid pitch too. So,
cool.
I mean, with the pitch mix and everything, I definitely think in the uptick that we saw, and he held that uptick. They were careful with him, but he held the uptick through the season, as long as he was on the mound. Definitely a name to watch.
Yeah, certainly number 16. And last but not least is Billy Amick, who was their second round pick this past year, was at Clemson, was amazing. 1236 OPS as a sophomore in 46 games. He transfers to Tennessee. He wins a national title. He is the third baseman. He's at that top of the lineup with Christian Moore. Hit 306, 23 bombs for the Volunteers. He played third base for Tennessee. Is he going to survive at third base in professional baseball? Maybe not. He's 6'1", 220, so he would be a slightly undersized first baseman, but can get by. He kept the K's in check in 77 plate appearances in pro ball after being drafted. The problem is there's minimal defensive versatility or defensive ability to speak of, and how good is the hit tool going to be in pro ball?
Yeah, that was my big concern. I think he's going to move to first, and I think the hit tool is a question for sure. Specifically, sliders gave him some trouble in college, and changeups as well. And anytime you see like a swinging strike rate hovering around 20%, and in the collegiate ranks, that's going to be a little concerning. Because it's only going to get better, right? I mean, we're talking about some of these hitters that have major hit tool concerns that we didn't even see really until professional baseball. So when you're struggling to the degree that Amick did against sliders, that was a concern for me. I still think he could end up just running into enough baseballs, and like he's got easy plus raw power. I think it could push towards plus as he continues to get more comfortable getting into that power, and I think it'll probably settle at plus. But with the pressure on the bat and with the chances of moving over to first base, I'd rather go with one of the younger guys that we're going to go with here. I thought we would be the low guys on Billy Amick, but I do want to throw a guy under the bus who's the man, who is definitely the low guy on the industry. When I was checking out his write-ups, Eric Longenhagen, I think, has Billy Amick lower than anybody on planet Earth. But he lays it out really well also. The reason why I'm bringing up Eric Longenhagen, he put out a really awesome piece that I think is so cool and a great idea. It's called How's My Driving? He did it for Fangraphs Prospect Week last year for the first time. And it's kind of what we've talked about, where it's something that we want to do on the show, retrospectively, like looking back at prospect write-ups and where did we go wrong? What did we overvalue, undervalue, whatever. And he's going back and doing it because he's been doing this, for a while now from 2018. So his 2018 write-up on Lewis Brinson where he was wrong and things like that. So I was reading that, and then that's where I ended up going down the rabbit hole of like, I want to see what he's got on some of these Twins guys. And I thought we'd be the low guy on Amick. It's Fangraphs. I think they had him at like 30 something. So citing the same concerns though. So a power-driven prospect is going to be volatile like that because it can be the Aaron Sabato track, or something clicks and then all of a sudden he's tapping into that plus raw power and he's on track to potentially hit 30 home runs. The challenge is he's got to do that essentially to be an everyday big leaguer. But seriously, check out the Eric Longenhagen How's My Driving piece. It is a really fun read. Also compares to the other rankings at the time in the industry as well. And you could just kind of see what the consensus was on some of these guys, and just kind of where the entire industry was maybe on or off on certain players.
Cool.
I'm going to get into the top 15 here, which starts with Dameury Pena. But before that, a quick break. 15. Dameury Pena. There might be a better way to say it.
Dameury, I have no idea.
Okay, well, Pena, this guy can hit, dude. The challenge is that's about the extent of his value at this point.
Yeah.
He's probably a second baseman, but the field of hit is ahead of everybody really at the complex. The approach is also ahead of just about everybody at the complex. The power is well below average, and he doesn't really have a defensive home yet. It's probably going to be second base because maybe it could be left field, I guess, as well. But he has a below average arm. And he just kind of looks uncomfortable everywhere they stick him. But he is just 19 years old, and he will be 19 years old for the entirety of the season. So we're talking about a guy here that at 18 years old looked kind of like a baby draft defensively, even though he's not the biggest guy either. So that part is weird, but he does have time to just get to a point of being passable. The thing that is very hard to teach is a plus hit tool with plus plate discipline. And this guy's walked, I think, nearly 3 times as much as he has struck out as a pro.
Yeah.
He's run a contact rate near 90%. It's very hard to poke a hole in his offensive abilities, aside from, just waiting to see if the power will be there. But I think you can also at least comfortably dream on gap to gap, which with a plus hit tool and plus plate discipline will be great. It's just, if he doesn't have a defensive spot, it's tough. But I think you're banking on him just being passable at second base, and then you've got a OBP guy that just gets by at second.
No, I mean, this guy coming up in the same organization that gave us Luis Ariz initially is poetic justice. 9 Ks in 36 games in 24, 9 Ks in 39 games in 2023. So in 279 career minor league plate appearances, he struck out 18 times in 279 plate appearances. That's a really low percentage. I think it's around like 4 or 5%, but it's a very, very low percentage. He hit 382 in the DSL. He hit 282 this past year. Is that a luck thing? Like, I don't know. Also, he's playing his complex ball in Florida. He hit 3 homers in 36 games. Were they tagged, or was it like, oh, they nicked the foul pole?
There was one that was tagged, like it wasn't hit hard, but just like hit at like a good angle, good trajectory. Yeah. I think he snuck another one over the monster, quote unquote, at one of the backfields, that they'll play there, they might have been playing. They were definitely playing on the main field there, but with the JetBlue Park where you've got the monster reincarnated there. But that said, like he snuck some impact here and there. Where like 104 mile per hour home run. Again, for an 18-year-old that's contact oriented, like that's hitting one pretty hard. So like if he can tap into that a little bit more, there's definitely at least gap to gap juice where you can sneak out 5 or so home runs. But if the hit tool is clearly plus, like it looks like, I mean, what I love about Pena is it's not going to swing and miss within the zone. But then also he's really good at spoiling pitches outside of the zone. Like his out of zone contact rate was north of 80%. So if you're only chasing at a 15% clip, which by the way, that was his number, which is insane. If you're only chasing at a 15% clip, and then in the rare occasions that you are chasing, you make contact with pitches outside of the zone more than just about anybody, how is this dude ever going to strike out?
Right.
You'd have to overwhelm him within the zone. And so far that hasn't really been a problem for him.
Yeah.
Number 14, Rayne Doncon, right?
Oof.
Right? Did I get that?
I don't know. Maybe.
We're getting a crazy stretch of pronunciation challenges here, but it's got to be Rayne Doncon. But Doncon, but traded over from the Dodgers. It was Manny Margot and Noah Miller for Doncon. He's took a big step forward this past year where there was some question about the hit tool. There was some question about the defense. I don't think he's going to be a shortstop, but he does look like a guy that can play a solid third base and potentially even above average third base. He was a $500,000 international free agent. He's definitely a guy that can that came with plenty of intrigue, and especially when you're in the Dodgers org. And the bat speed was always his calling card, but he couldn't quite get into it in games enough. Started to do that. He's still learning to do that, though, I think, at the clip that you want to see. But took a step forward big time in the plate discipline regard, where he cut his chase rate by about 8%. And also, you start to see him elevate the ball more consistently, so that 90th percentile of 104 miles per hour could actually translate a little bit more into, I think, not just homers, but doubles as well. He had 24 doubles in 94 games, also 3 triples. So saw the extra base hit ability there. He does tend to sell out for the power a little, or sell out for the pull a little bit more than you like to see. But he did show the ability. And I was watching the video, like there was plenty of swings where when he was having good stretches, ball's traveling, he's driving it to the right center gap or just to straightaway center field. And then the bad stretches, it was like where he put a couple good swings on balls to the pull side, and then it was like he wanted more. And you could feel him like kind of just pursuing that maybe a little bit too much. But he was just 20 years old last season. He's going to be 21 years old until the end of this season as well. So he's still got time on his side, put up great numbers in low A, held his own in high A. I think this could be a solid, versatile infielder who can plug in at short in a pinch. And I still believe can hit 20 to 25 home runs if it all comes together, but at least could be a 15 to 20 home run guy with the approach really making some progress as well to help him, cut into that K rate.
21 years old. I wouldn't be shocked if he was assigned to Double A. I would expect him to be assigned to High A, but he did play 56 games there and looked decent. It was a 730 OPS in Cedar Rapids. So you would assume that he goes to High A again, but non-zero chance that he goes to Double A Wichita, and he could spend the entirety of the year as a 21-year-old in Double A, which is exciting. He keeps the Ks in check too, which is interesting. And I mean, even last year when he hit 216 in Rancho, he K'd 103 times in 473 plate appearances. So you're looking at a very low 20% K rate, which is palatable. So what next step is just continuing to improve how often he elevates?
Yeah, I would say elevating without having to sell out for the pull, because I think for guys, step one is, okay, I want to drive the ball in the air consistently. The most natural way to do that is let me kind of drop and drive and try to get this thing in the air to left field as a righty, where it's no, it's really about the path and entering the zone earlier and just having the right angles to be able to just drive the ball in the air to all fields. And I saw him do it. There's a couple bombs and just rockets that he hit the other way into center field where he has the path and the feel for the barrel to at least be able to do that. So I think it's just being able to get into that elevating it feel without it being always trying to get out and around stuff, because that's where he starts to run into some trouble with spin and things like that. But what I did see, and I think the biggest shift with him this year or last year was the improvement in recognizing spin. And to me, that is one of the best indicators of being able to use the whole field a little bit more, because if I can't recognize spin at first, I think it's a fastball that's going to be starting wherever that slider is starting. I think that it's going to be a fastball that finishes around there, and I'm going to kind of leave it, especially if it's middle in. But even if it's down the middle, I'm going to still be trying to stay there. And then the slider, it's going to kind of break away from me. But if you recognize that, you're still thinking, okay, stay on it, and drive it to where it's going. So he can recognize, that's for sure. And I think that was something that was a big problem in his game before. So now that he's recognizing, how can I leverage that as a hitter and use the whole field more? I don't need to be this feast or famine pull guy. So I'm very excited to see what it looks like. I think it'll be a repeat in high A. But to your point, I think it'll be a relatively quick push to Double A, because if you're hanging out in Wichita for a while, that's okay.
That's fine.
And I think it's a
You're
good
21
challenge.
years old. Yeah.
And it'll benefit him power-wise, too, out there when he's getting the ball in the air.
Yeah.
Another guy that likes to pull it in the air. Eduardo Beltre. What a pro debut for him in the DSL. And he's a high-priced guy. And no challenges pronouncing this name. I always realize that's the one thing we'll forget sometimes before we get into it. I'll write 1,000 words on a dude or 1,500 words, and I'll have the chase rate, the everything. Been watching all of the swings or pitches, and then we go into the episode, and I'm like,
how do we say his name?
How do we say? Oh,
we threw out his name. Yeah, where's the name? Where's the name?
Where's
Fine
the name?
Dining and breathing.
I hope people would catch that reference.
Yeah.
Beltre, man, it was a ridiculous year. If the underlying data was a little bit stronger, I think he's easily in the top 10, but there's still just some yellow flags there, right? If you're swinging and missing in the DSL, there's going to be some concern there. It didn't rear its head in terms of like a massive strikeout rate or anything, but just the underlying contact rates were, I would say, fringy. And that's okay, because we've also seen guys shore that up and just rake from there. And also, like, he's a guy that was just getting it off. Like, he was getting his A swing off all the time. And I think if he swung and missed early in the count, I don't think he really cared, because he felt like, hey, I'm going to battle with two. And if I get my best swing off 3 times, I like my chances of hitting a home run. And he hit 11 of them in 43 games. So he's got really impressive bat speed. He has the ability to drive the ball in the air. And this is another guy that, yes, he tends to sell out to the pole, but I watched him pulverize 3 or 4 home runs to dead center. So again, when he was at his best, he was doing that. What I really like here is already very selective at the plate. So he's getting his A swing off, and it's an aggressive swing, but it's a sub 20% chase rate. I think he's going to probably be a below average hit tool guy. But when you have above average power, above average plate discipline, he's an above average runner who could probably play above average defense in a corner. They're going to keep trying him at all 3.
Yep.
I'm excited to see how Beltre handles the challenge stateside, which he'll be 18 years old for the entire season.
Yeah, it was funny because you initially had Amick in the top 15, and then you had Beltre outside of it for those yellow flags. And you were like, I'm taking Beltre, you got Amick. And I'm like, no, I like Beltre. Don't do this to me, but it's better for him to be in the top 15 here. 11 homers in that small of a sample, like 11 homers, if you're not playing full season ball, that's a crazy number. And that should get you, I think, like, as standard and as basic as it looks, that should get you in the top 15 of really any system. If you're going to get into that power as consistently as that, when, like, the DSL, we talk about it a lot, guy. Like, there are a lot of guys that walk a lot and don't strike out because the DSL, chances are, like, if it's not belt high, like, a lot of the misses are going to be bad misses.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you can capitalize when you get 1 or 2 pitches in afternoon and you can hit 11 homers in 40-something games, 11 homers in 43 games, you have my full attention.
Yep. And he can run too. Yeah. It's a good baseball body. And I think still a little bit of room for more. When you do that with the selectiveness, and we'll see if you can, like you mentioned, it's a little bit easier to be selective when guys are spraying the ball all over.
Yeah, but it's also harder to be ready when guys are spraying the ball
and get 11 home runs off. So I'm excited to see what it looks like, and they may push him a little bit more aggressively, but I think it'll be mostly at the complex, and if he shows well, we might see him in low A.
Yep.
A guy that we'll see at the big leagues because of the Rule 5 draft is Eiberson Castellano. He came over from the Phillies in that Rule 5 draft, and he was a $10,000 IFA guy in 2018, and he didn't even pitch professionally. I guess he was just like working out at the complex or whatever until 2021. Obviously COVID played a part in that. I'm sure he would have made his pro debut quicker, but doesn't make it until 2021. And it wasn't really until 2024 where we saw him put it all together and started to get into a more athletic, just shape in general. And I think just better conditioning in general. I needed to update the weight though. He's probably closer to like 220, but got into much better shape. And I think it helped not only his stuff, but I think it also helps his command and his repeatability and just ability to go deeper into games. This guy punched out 10 or more on 4 different occasions this year and punched out as many as 13 in one outing. The way he closed out the year was really impressive. Aside from one blow up, at Somerset, there was a lot of really impressive, just high volume strikeout appearances. He saw his fastball take up to what averaged 94.7 miles per hour. He's a 4-seamer and a sinker. I don't like the sinker. The sinker really is just like a dead zone fastball. The 4-seamer flashes good vert and I think can actually be a well above average fastball, but it's a power curve that is disgusting at about 82. And then a whole mix in a changeup. I think this is a big reason why he made the leap that he made this past year. The changeup was a pitch he hardly ever threw. It was a pitch he threw 15% of the time and predominantly to lefties this year. And the way that it worked off his fastball from his release, hitters, it may not be a great stuff plus pitch, but it was a big swing and miss pitch within the zone, and it was dirty, and he was able to land it at least enough. It's a 3-pitch mix that I think is going to ensure him that he's going to be a big leaguer for a while. I loved the Rule 5 pick here because you have a guy that can get whiffs with the fastball when he needs.
Yeah.
Can get whiffs with the curveball, and just showed you this improved feel for a changeup. I wouldn't be surprised if they show him the patented Twins cutter. And if they do that, then I really like his chances of sticking as a starter. But I love him even as is right now as this Swiss Army knife swingman type that can pitch in the seventh, or could piggyback or could spot start if you need.
He's the perfect Rule 5 pick because we talk about guys that are like, okay, can you survive in a bullpen? Can you survive in 2-inning spurts for an entire year? And then we reintroduce you into the starting rotation when we need you. I really don't think Minnesota needs him in the starting rotation because we're talking about guys getting pinched out to AAA St. Paul right now. Like if Paddock is still on the team, one of Zebby or Festa, maybe both, is going to be in St. Paul to open the year. And I'd rather see those two get starts, especially because they're already on the 40-man roster. They already debuted last year. Castellano has to be on the 26-man roster the entirety of the year, assuming health. He seems like a guy that can give you 2 to 3 innings if you're up 5 or down 5, which is great. But he, like you're mentioning, like the pitch mix could also be decent leverage, like 6th inning, 7th inning, you're in a pinch, you need to bridge the gap to Duran and Jax. Like Castellano can be one of those guys that helps you. Also, you said you have to adjust the weight to what, 220?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, he's listed at 160 elsewhere. So it's like you kind of found the middle here. I saw 6'3", 160. I was like, oh, he's lanky. And then I watched some video. I was like, yeah, no, he's not.
He's not lanky.
Yeah, no. It's like, okay, gotcha. But no, it's exciting stuff, man. I think this is, if I were just looking for a template to grab in a Rule 5 draft, it's this.
Yeah.
It's either this or a 4th outfielder that's an elite defender.
Yep. Because you hope that player, the 4th outfielder, can blossom enough as a hitter to become an everyday player. But if he doesn't, you're very fine justifying the roster spot for him. And with, I see teams, all the time. Obviously, it's a lot easier to find the guy that can for sure, or at least you feel confident, can pitch 1 inning and stick in your bullpen. But if he can't, then see ya. With Castellano, it's like, okay, we're going to try him in the bullpen. And he can either potentially be high leverage in shorter spurts. He might be 96, 97. If that doesn't totally work, he could be a long man for us. And then we still have a reasonable pipe dream of him actually becoming a number 5 starter or something like that. So it's a really nice situation to have here. I think very, very unlikely he gets returned, to be honest. I love what he has going on there. He is a big control over command guy, because he might look at the walk rate and be like, well, why is it only 40, 45, command? He doesn't walk guys, but he does not hit his spots as much as he should. And it was a 62% overall strike rate. It has to be one of the more unique discrepancies in strike rate and walk rate I've seen. 62% strike rate, a sub 7% walk rate. It's pretty rare, but it's also a testament to his ability to get back into counts and get weak contact to get out of situations.
Yeah.
Number 11, recent guest of the show, and got to be the best story in the minor leagues right now. But Payton Eeles is more than just a good story. This guy's a big leaguer. And I think he could be a pretty darn good one. And that's why he checks in at number 11. If you haven't heard the episode, go check that out, because I think you'll come away even more bullish on Eeles just hearing his mentality and the way he goes about his business. He is just a gamer in all respects, but his journey is amazing, all that good stuff. But on top of that, he just can flat out play. And it really, I think, is proven in the way that he was able to force himself into the AAA and soon to be potentially big league equation here, despite not even really being considered as an option out of the gate, right? I mean, this is a guy that was signed for depth at the lower levels and then just kept hitting and then gets up to high A and just kept hitting, and then skips double A because they needed a guy in triple A because there was an injury, and kept hitting. So when you look at what he can do, I do think it's going to translate. We're talking about a guy that's like 5'6", really crouches into that stance, and is extremely selective. So you have a small strike zone, and you leverage that strike zone very well. And then you put up above average contact rates within that strike zone. How are you going to strike this dude out? It's going to be quite hard. And then on top of that, I think he started to provide a lot more value in other aspects than maybe people would have expected. He can hit, I think, a lot of doubles. And I know he hit 12 home runs. I don't know if that's going to happen at the big league level, but this is a dude that can absolutely spray the ball over the yard and provides enough power to justify keeping him in the lineup. He's a plus runner. He was a menace on the base path this past year. He projects best as an everyday second baseman, but he survived plugging in at shortstop. And he's talked about on the show, he's like eager to keep getting better and learning the outfield. And I will not bet against this guy's work ethic, but just the speed and ability in general should allow him to progress nicely in the outfield as well. He could really be a quality super utility piece, really buoyed by the fact that he's going to walk with the best of them. Yeah. He's going to put the ball in play consistently, and he's going to motor. 15% chase rate, 86% in zone contact rate. That's going to play.
So I like putting things in perspective in different ways. And I just did it on the Just Baseball show when we were doing our top starting pitchers. When we got to Skeens, Skeens just finished year 2 of pitching full time, and he's on the cover of a video game. So like that tells you how big 24 was. This guy was signed for $500 a couple weeks into the 2024 season. And now he's got a 10-minute video on Foolish Baseball's YouTube channel, and it's got 85,000 views. I mean, like, who could have seen this coming? And obviously, we had that conversation with Payton, and he saw it coming, like, because he's a very confident person in what he can do. But he needed a shot, and dude, he's right. Like, he got his shot, and he made it work, man. It's the best story in minor league baseball in 24, and it's not close. And it's going to be maybe the best story in Major League Baseball in 25, and I don't know if it'll be close.
I will be collecting his cards. I don't care how the big league situation goes. I think he's going to succeed, but regardless, I can't wait to go after like I want his debut patch. Unfortunately, I don't think I could like in good conscience keep it. I would probably
buy it and give it to him.
Yeah, but then I'd ask him to scoop up some more because I just want his cards. Like his game, it's and he talked about Altuve and things like that, and just like the throwback type of player that's overlooked is one side of it, but overlooked times a million when you're a Division II player who does his final year of eligibility at Coastal Carolina and then plays for the Chicago Dogs and the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs, and like it's just such an awesome story. And then you cap it off with him just being a fantastic human.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can't you be all in? And how much he wants it. Again, not just ranking him at 11 because of that. I truly think this is a Major League Baseball player and a solid, at least bench piece. There may not be enough impact there to be an everyday player, but I could see a second division regular here because he's going to walk a ton. He walked more than he struck out this past year against right. In general, he walked the exact amount that he struck out, but against righties walked more than he struck out. And that's the other side of it too, is you shelter him from left on left, which you don't really need to do. But if you're just trying to squeeze out every drop here, because you might have a more productive primary option. He had a 749 OPS against lefties. Against righties, he slashed 320, 461, 566. It's 1,026 OPS with 10 home runs, 14 doubles, and 8 triples. So if this guy can come along and play some decent outfield and steal 30 plus bags, like that is a super utility piece in every sense of the idea.
Yes. He's going to be a big leaguer for, I think he could get to free agency. I have a lot of faith in him getting to arbitration.
I do too. I compare like so many guys to him, and it's different, but it's just like, I always look at a John Birdie and I'm like, if he can do it, this guy can do it. Yeah. That's not a knock on John Birdie.
It's a testament to Eeles.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 10, CJ Culpepper. We're going to talk about the right-hander, but before that, one more quick break. So talk about kitchen sink. This might be kitchen sink plus the cabinets plus everything else, the garbage disposal. You're going to get everything from CJ Culpepper. When's the last time you've seen a 7-pitch mix, Jack?
You Darvish.
That's a different breed.
Did you run out of columns available for you?
Dude,
for
it was
grades?
It was the first time on the back end of WordPress I actually had to adjust the settings.
Oh, tough.
Look how skinny the future value column is.
They're very skinny. Yeah.
It's wild. And this is why I think Culpepper is going to survive as a solid depth arm and potentially number 5 starter. He missed a little time with the forearm issue, but it was only 2 months and got back and held his velo right after that. He's enjoyed an uptick the year before, so it could have been some residual effects from that. Like it was a couple ticks up. But he throws weird. We talked about this. You remember the last Twins episode or probably 8 months ago, but it's kind of that football release. Yeah. And another theme that you'll see through this Twin system is cut ride fastballs. Yeah. And most of these guys are supinators, not pronators. It just seems to be what the Twins like. Culpepper's as good of an example of that. But he's got the fastball that plays up a little bit because it's just unique with the cut ride, and I think gets enough swing and miss, and especially at the higher velocity now. His sweeper is his best pitch, and that's definitely something that keeps righties at bay, but he commands it well enough to mix it into lefties. He added that cutter last year, which I really think helped give him another look and get some whiff within the zone to lefties. And then it's a fine slider as well. It's a fine curveball, and then a changeup he'll mix in as well. I would say it's really 1+ pitch, but then 2 big league pitches, and then 2, fringy, borderline average big league pitches, and then, a taste breaker. That might be enough to hold on to the back end of a rotation spot based on execution. And he's shown the ability to execute.
That delivery is never going to result in a good changeup. Like I promise you that. Being mean for a minute like that, he's never going to be able to pronate like that because of the arm path and because of what he does. Do you remember the video of Dak Prescott doing like the hip turn pregame?
Yeah.
So that is, I think, what makes CJ Culpepper a very good supinator. Is he's almost throwing like a quarterback. And you mentioned the football arm path. Like, watch the delivery and watch the way his torso works. It feels like he's almost throwing with his hips, and he's getting down on the mound a decent bit, but like he's riding this like aggressive hip turn into the rest of his body, catching up and firing. Yeah. And he's going to spin some frisbees, and that's where the sweeper comes in.
Yeah.
From that, it's like you're just going to let the arm eat behind the hips. And if you're throwing with your hips, like it might go some places, but the fact that he has 50 command is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, it's come along really nicely, especially the cutter. Like he is really commanded, and it makes sense with the way that he throws. He probably throws that cutter like a football. And it just is. It seems so natural. And then with the slider, it's just a grip change and a little bit more snap. But what I love is you got every kind of velocity here, and you also have a lot of different ways to get hitters out. That sinker also came along really nicely for him and became a pitch that he uses to righties as well. He picked up a 74% ground ball rate on the sinker. So he's able to buzz up the four seamer, which is more of like a cut ride fastball. It's not great, but it works well enough when you get lulled with the sinker down. The cutter also that has more movement off of that. And then the slider, which is going to obviously have the most movement. But what I love is the velo kind of markers. 94.5 with the four seamer, 93.7 on the sinker, 89.5 on the cutter, 83.4 on the slider, 88 on the changeup, and 80 on the curveball. And the curveball really came along and kind of overtook the changeup, which is great because I agree with you. I just don't see the changeup happening for him. And that became a pitch that he can mix into lefties as well. So put him in a really good spot. But that cutter was super effective to lefties. Again, still mixed in the slider, not the sweeper as much, but the slider variation, because he has a slider and the sweeper. And it works. So this is another guy too that I don't think they're going to want to waste too many bullets in the minor leagues. He already finished the year with some success in Double-A, closed out the year with 9 consecutive scoreless innings and 11 Ks at Double-A against Frisco and Tulsa. So this is another guy that could be more depth by the end of the season.
Real quick, really weird ad on the right side of your screen here. What is this? Maturation of the egg? It's like it's a bizarre ad. I have no idea what's going on there. But CJ Culpepper, I'm with you, but then you get back into the twin conversation where there's no space for any starting pitcher. So why would Culpepper they're going to have to waste bullets in St. Paul at some point. So it's like it stinks, but it's okay. Also, as soon as he gets loaded into MLB The Show, you are going to piss off your friends with CJ Culpepper because you're just going to have all those distinct speeds that you're talking about. It's going to be like, dude, stop. He's a cheat code.
Yeah. Especially when you used to be able to guess pitch. I hope they can bring that back. That part was fun. You would never be able to. So I'm excited to see what he can do. And another good identification by the Twins, right? 13th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, Brandon Winokur. There's some in the industry that are very high on him. I actually have to update the position because I think he's just an outfielder, but they're primarily playing him in a shortstop now. Winokur is a tooled out, exciting project. He's 6'6", 210. He could play some shortstop, but he also plays center. They put him in at third base as well. He's too big for shortstops. I hope they stop that. He gets by, and I think he looked good enough, especially with the plus arm, where I think they wanted to just see it through. But this is a guy that has, I think, comfortably plus wheels. It could be closer to plus plus. Some get plus run times. I've only got plus, but like comfortably plus. I think he could go get it in center with the best of them if he has the time and ability to develop out there. The big question is going to be the hit tool. A lot of swing and miss, but even with that, he made it work enough to be productive, and as a 19-year-old at low A last season. But the swing is just too chaotic. It's hands are rocking like crazy.
Yeah.
Then they get low and back, big barrel tip, big leg kick where his knee gets up to his waist. It's not really all in sync. And it's a testament to his athleticism that he could do all that and put up a 761 OPS. But it also resulted in a 62% contact rate. He has plus power potential because there's clearly more room to add strength within his 6'6" frame. And the fact that he's made it work enough with all those moving parts, with such long levers and everything, there could be offensive ability in there to continue to unlock. But he can fly. I think he could be an asset in center field. He could also play some third base. And it's just going to be a question of refining the offensive game.
I was going to ask you if it was a baby giraffe problem, but like it doesn't really look like
Not
a baby giraffe problem. No. It just looks like a lot of moving parts. Like that's the problem that you're talking about. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting. Like the fact that he can blossom into 60 game power. Honestly, as soon as you just take a look at him and watch a little bit of video, or if you saw him down in Florida, like, I think you can see 60 power because he's a big dude. And that makes a lot of sense that he's going to move to the outfield. Probably corner outfield, right? Or do you think he can?
I think he can go get it in center. I really do. Like, he flies. And, like, we'll see. Obviously, if the reads and routes aren't great, they could move him to a corner. If that guy's playing right, he's a plus defender. His arm is plus.
Cool.
His closing speed will be enough, even if the reads aren't great. I think he'd be a plus defender. But the reason why I think they should do it tomorrow is because I think if he gets the reps through his age 20 season, he could actually become an above average center fielder.
Yeah.
But you got to do it now. Stop making this kid try to learn shortstop.
Right. It's just not
6'6" dude. Like, he survives off athleticism. And I think that's the name of the game with the hitting side of things as well. Let's push this guy towards excelling. To your point, though, about the power and flashes of it, 111 mile per hour home run as a 19-year-old. And you see how much more room there is for strength and just power within his frame. He could easily tap into plus power. So he's a guy that could be a rocket ship or, could struggle in high A.
Gotcha.
A guy that I know you enjoyed watching throw, Andrew Morris,
Mm-hmm.
right-hander, finished the year in AAA. Another kind of kitchen sink adjacent type of guy that executes, though, so well. 23 years old. It's a 4th round pick in 2022. Fills up the zone. 70% strike rate this past year. He is very similar to Zebby Matthews. I think Zebby may have a little bit more projection in his stuff, but Morris may even execute slightly better when he's on. Morris ultimately, I think, lacks some of the characteristics that you want to see. I think Zebby has a little bit more going for him there. But Morris seems to get a little bit more than the TrackMan data would imply. And I think there's some unique aspects to his over-the-top delivery where he also gets a little bit of cut to it, where at the release point and the vert that he gets, you wouldn't expect as much swing and miss. But I think it's because of how he can locate it within the top of the zone and how he tunnels off of the rest of his stuff and how it sets up the rest of his stuff. Locating that slight cut ride at 94.5, he gets above average chase, enough whiff, and he landed that fastball for a strike 74% of the time. And then you have a slider that looks like it looks average, plays to above average because he locates it so damn consistently. Then he has a changeup that came along really nicely. That looks like it could be a quality pitch. And that cutter, another guy that he adds the cutter, and that's become a great offering for him. I think gives him a second above average pitch. Nobody could barrel up that cutter this past year. Didn't give up a home run on it. The average exit velocity against it was very, very low. I think I have it somewhere here in the write-up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was around like 80 miles per hour.
80.5, yeah.
Yeah, like clearly hitters just could not hit that thing hard.
No, the thing that I enjoyed watching most is he's just an incredibly advanced arm for a 23-year-old. And you say Zebby may have a little bit more projection. Zebby's also 2 years older. So Morris just turned 23 in September. So, like, we're talking about a guy that I mean can really pitch for a newly turned 23-year-old. That's probably going to spend the entirety of the year in AAA. I'm excited to see how it works, but so far so good, man. Like 41 minor league starts, 218 innings at a 2.56 ERA.
Crazy.
He hasn't been beaten up. And
No.
you know, we talk about Webb in Cleveland. We talk about a lot of these pitchability guys. Like I think Morris is becoming one of the better pitchability arms in the upper minors right now. And that doesn't mean that he's a top 100 prospect, but it just means that like he could probably get up and get by across 5 innings for the Minnesota Twins tomorrow. Are they going to do it? Probably not, because there are better options or more enticing options, but like I think he could do it for a lot of teams.
High probability 5 for sure. And
Very high probability 5.
could be great trade bait too. I mean, you
Yeah.
package him with a Paddock, or
You get a legit prospect back, or you get
Yeah.
a pre-art big leaguer back.
So I'm curious to see what they do. There's a lot of teams like he screams innings eater too. Like he threw 130 innings right this past year. Like
Yeah.
it's not a ton of effort there. The fastball from a TrackMan perspective, again, like I can't quite get over it because you see grades out there. I think I saw sub 50 grades on the fastball, but like opponents hit 220 against it with a 560 OPS. I know it doesn't look great, but it works somehow. And I think it's one of those things that like there just might be the doubt: is it going to work at the MLB level? Is it going to work at the MLB level? And you won't fully find out until it does. But it's really hard to argue against the results. The last note is I just think it's weak contact across the board. Yeah. Clearly, the fastball gets a lot of weak contact. The changeup doesn't have the velo separation that you would want. It's only about 5 miles per hour in velocity separation, but he gets so much vertical and horizontal separation that it just ends up becoming a ground ball pitch for him. It's almost like a sinker. And it's you got a 67% ground ball rate, and opponents hit 184 against it. So I just think he's going to be able to get weak contact left and right. And I know that you were, you correct me if I'm wrong, you were team Morris over this next guy. And I have a feeling that I could end up changing my tune quickly if Morris maintains that success in AAA.
Yes, I'm absolutely team Morris over the next guy.
Sorry. Number 7 is Marco Raya. And I'm going to give him one more year here to see if that stuff can translate. Because the difference is with Raya, you have 2+ pitches potentially here and a fastball that should be better. Like, just frankly, that's the funny thing is like Morris's fastball should probably play worse and Raya's should play better, but the results are the results, right? And I think that's going to be a big wrinkle in this thing is if Raya can't get that fastball to where he wants it to be, then that might hold him back a bit. The difference is his slider is a clear plus pitch. I think it's one of the best sliders in the org. And his cutter is a plus pitch. And he used both really successfully. His biggest problem is he can't really get lefties out at nearly a comparable clip to how he gets righties out. It makes sense when your cutter slider. The changeup has never come along for him. So his curveball has become kind of that go-to pitch. And the curveball is flashed too. And that's the other thing too, is that is flashed above average. And that's the pitch that he can use more against lefties and will use more against lefties. But his fastball command is just brutal, which is weird because he actually locates the slider and the cutter and even the curveball quite well. But he sprays the fastball, not necessarily way out of the zone, but either just a non-competitive pitch or 2, then just right down the middle. Like it's really tough because from a shape perspective, it should play better, has better characteristics than some of the other fastballs we talked about. But damn, man, he just misses middle with it way too much.
I will say I watched him miss middle with a cutter a lot too. And, you know, I understand the movement profile is good, but I just felt like this guy was over the heart of the plate a lot. And I only got to, you know, watch him through a live full game once, but I was keeping tabs because he's been an exciting project for the last however many years. And, you know, he was finally on the mound. I got to see him. I was calling a game that he was starting, and I was like, there's a lot of middle offerings. The other thing, it's rare that I notice that somebody doesn't extend well. He can't extend well. I see it's like 6.1 feet of extension, 6.2 feet of extension. I have no idea where that lies, but
it's slightly below average. Yeah.
It's slightly below average. Like
it's 6.5 is probably about the average.
Okay. Like,
so it's a below average.
To be honest, man, it just seemed very hittable. And I thought the slider was really good, but the slider was his bailout pitch.
Mhm.
That was it. And, maybe I was a little jaded because I was going Bubba Chandler to Thomas Harrington, and I'm seeing these guys execute at a super high level. And then I go to Ryan, I'm like, okay, you're the prospect that I'm really excited to watch. And it's like, okay, yeah, the slider's good, but how are you going to get to the sliders?
Yeah. No, and I hear that. I do think the cutter just he seems to even get away with it. Will he get away with it the same level at the big league level? I maybe not, but opponents had a 550 OPS against it, huge in zone whiff numbers. So just seems to create a really tough angle at 90 miles per hour with that. If the fastball command gets better, you're looking at a guy that I think will have the ability to execute enough to keep lefties at bay. Righties clearly are not comfortable against him, and that's the interesting thing. Righties hit a 560 OPS against him this past year, hit 204. Lefties hit 280 with an 830 OPS. So that's something he's going to have to figure out and could end up being a restricting aspect. I don't feel too strong about, Raya over Moore. So I can absolutely see, or Morris, excuse me. I could absolutely see Morris overtaking him. It's kind of like a floor ceiling conversation here. But Raya is kind of running out of time to push that ceiling higher. That said, he has definitely already shown enough to prove that he can be a big league reliever and swingman type of guy with just the velocity and the slider and the cutter.
Yeah.
Guy that could be better than all of them, and it's just dependent on health, is Connor Prielipp.
Yes.
And how nice was it just to see Prielipp in the flesh throwing? It was just, and the results were incredible. They're obviously going to be very careful with him because it's been a crazy stretch, really, since he debuted at Alabama, where he looked like he was ready to take the college baseball world by storm. He was off to a crazy start in 2020, allowing just 5 hits in his first 21 innings. Then the COVID pandemic wiped out the season. Then he pitched a handful of innings in 2021, Tommy John surgery. Then as a sophomore, or excuse me, it would have been in 2021 as a sophomore. And then it still ends up getting drafted because the stuff is so crazy, ends up needing an internal brace procedure after another 6 innings and change. So we really didn't see him pitch for several years. Then finally works his way back. They were extra cautious with him, and you know how it is with the minor leagues, kind of keep it all close to your vest. So we didn't really get updates. So I think that kind of added to the, oh no, is there something seriously wrong with him? Is it an Espino situation or whatever? It turns out probably not, because once he came back, he looked great, as good as ever. And I know we don't have a ton of examples of that, but just at Alabama, he was averaging 92.5. And then even in that, sophomore season, he was averaging 94. This past year, where we got to see him throw a fair amount, relatively speaking, which wasn't a ton, but a fair amount, he averaged 95. And he did that through the duration of each of his appearances. They didn't want him to go more than 45 pitches, but in that last outing of the year, he goes 3 perfect with 6 Ks and averaged 94.8 on the fastball in 45 pitches.
Let's go back to his previous 2 before that. His final 3 starts of the season with High A Cedar Rapids, 9 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 15 Ks.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's fine. 1 hit, 1 walk, 15 Ks. He hit a batter, so the command was crazy. But I mean, dude, come on.
It's a crazy watch.
You let a guy go in 3 inning spurts like that, where it's like, hey man, empty the tank and you're going to do it again in 6 days or a week, whatever it may be. You're going to get something like this. And how freaking cool is that? I love how physical he is. And I love the slot that the slider comes from, because it has to have more vertical break than most.
It's a gyro slider for sure.
Yeah, dude,
I'm up there. But the thing is he crossfires. So with the crossfire from that vertical release, it was already going to have that vertical drop, but the horizontal plays up too, because he's working across the mound. He starts on the third base side of the mound and then works his way over, and then the arm kind of works back the other way. So you're having, it's not truly 2-plane break, but it plays almost like that with the way that he's able to create these angles. And I think that's what makes that slider potentially a plus pitch. And then the fastball from his release, he doesn't get great extension, but it just works and it takes off from there, and hitters seem to struggle to pick it up. And then the changeup off of that, it's a tunneling nightmare with those 3 pitches. and then he executes so well. Off of 2 elbow surgeries to fill up the zone like he does and hit his spots, dude, it's a really, really fun watch going back and just seeing those outings. He's confident on the mound. He looks free. He looks like he feels very comfortable. And the only reason he's not a 50 future value is because of the injury concern and risk. In terms of the prospectability, he should be a 50, but we're also baking in just the value of the prospect with the future value. And obviously with the injury concerns, it's a little bit restrictive. He's going to be 24 years old for the entire season. So I think they'll push him pretty quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts in double.
I wouldn't be surprised either. And the last thing I will say, I feel like the comp has been thrown around a lot, especially about lefties over the last year or so, but the delivery is a lot closer to Garrett Crochet and Hagen Smith than most. Like it's pretty darn similar.
He's fun to watch, man.
He's fun.
I'm excited to see what he can do, and I'm just hands together, like please stay healthy
on the hill.
And it's this is a guy where it's obviously out of his control. He's going to do everything he can, and he has been doing everything he can, and you can see that with just what he already showed on the mound. So was so happy to see him back on the mound. I know there's some Twins accounts. We'll probably get a couple reply notes. So it was like Prielipp enjoyer, Prielipp believer. And for the last couple of years, I was like, man, that account must be feeling
sad.
It must be going through it. So I hope you were soaking it in, baby. And I hope you do for the duration of 2025.
Yeah.
Number 5, Charlee Soto. It ended up getting a lot better than the first time we saw him, which was his pro debut. And we talked about it, man. The poor kid is making his pro debut in spring breakout with like his whole family there. So supportive. Seemed like an awesome group that just kept cheering no matter what. It was rough. It was a tough watch.
Yeah.
He struggled with command. Tough spot to make your pro debut in spring breakout like that. But it was a little bit of a getting your feet wet through the first few outings. He has a great outing, then he has then he has a good outing, then he has then he has a good outing, then he has a bad one. And then I really felt like he settled in his last 6 or 7 starts. And that's what has him on this top 5 in the system trajectory for me, because remember, he was one of the youngest guys in the class, dude. And not only was he one of the youngest guys in the class, this is another conversation of a converted infielder with minimal miles on his arm that did not really focus on pitching until his junior year. So one of the youngest in the class didn't focus on pitching until his junior year. Of course, he's going to have a little bit of an acclimation process. Usually guys like that, they start at the complex. They didn't do that. They started him at low A. And I thought he showed some really good things. He's got to figure some things out shape-wise, I think, and just create some more distinct looks. And I think those things will come. But when you have a guy that is barely pitched relative to his peers, who already has a great feel for a plus changeup, I'm going to be willing to wait and see on how the rest of the stuff comes along, especially when he's already capable of reaching 97, 98.
Right. And they're BBs, man. Like the arm path is like, wow, this thing is absolutely jumping. And the metrics wouldn't say that it's jumping, but like you just watch it and it's like he's slingshotting 97, 98 in there with the changeup diving off of that. It's great. You mentioned the strong finish to the year. The downside, like the other edge of the sword, is his second to last start, he walked 6.
Yeah.
So like you'd like to see him find a groove, and unfortunately he just didn't do that in Fort Myers this past year. And that's why he had an ERA in the low 5s. But here's to hoping, 25 and he goes to high A and he settles into another full season of pro ball, that he has like one of those hot stretches of, hey, I've gone a month where I'm feeling right. And I think that's coming this year.
You know what's interesting too? I'm curious what you think about this. Like final 6 starts, 11 walks. So that means he walked 6 in one and then 5 in the other 5 total. How much of it do you think is just a kid that doesn't have the cues yet to get himself recalibrated in an outing? So when it unraveled in that 6-walk outing, it unraveled, because you had outings where it was 4 or 5 innings, no walks, or a bunch that were 1 walk. And then you had this, 1 4-walk outing earlier in the year, and then that 6-walk outing later in the year. I just don't think that's who he'll ultimately be.
No, I don't think so. I think the only follow-up question that I would need to ask is, how is it happening? Is it happening externally or internally? And by that, I mean, externally, is it happening with a mechanical thing that he could like shut it down and take a deep breath and think, okay, I can focus on, driving off my back leg, or I can focus on the timing of handbrake, something like that? Or is it internal where it's damn, I just walked a guy, I hope I don't walk another guy? So like I'm
looking at
wondering
the
if it's
chart.
in the mind or if it's actually in the body.
I'm looking in the chart, and we'll have to find. Yeah, it's hard to know that.
Right.
Everything arm side missed in that 6 walk
So
start.
that makes me think it's in the body. That
Yeah.
makes me think that there was a mechanical thing going on in that start.
Like everything arm side. It's crazy. So and those are the things that you hope come along. But that changeup, dude, holy crap! Like that could be one of the best changeups in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
It's 17 inches of horizontal and 3 inches of vert. I mean, that is in some rare territory there, especially when it's getting 9 miles per hour separation from the fastball. And also, the thing that he's going to need to figure out is the 4-seamer is 14 inches of vert and 10.5 inches of horizontal. The 2-seamer is 8 inches of vert and 13.5 inches of horizontal. Those are both too close to the dead zone on each edge of the dead zone. You need to distinguish them a little bit further, or at least one of them. The 4-seamer plays a lot better at this point because it's just sheer velocity. And I don't know if it's going to play the same way at the more challenging levels. If it does, I feel really good about where he's headed. Cutter execution needs to come along a little bit more too. Everything in general, he's just very raw, but that changeup is enough to get me really excited about him.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Kaelen Culpepper, first round pick, 24th overall in this past draft. And one of the few picks that we nailed on the mock draft. He's just a high floor bat. I don't know if the conversation is going to be as long about Culpepper until we really see more of him. I think the pro debut was nice. I think people are a little too quick to move him off of short, to be honest. As a guy that was playing third base through the early parts of his collegiate career, I think as he started to realize, hey, I'm a first round prospect potentially, and how athletic he is and his plus arm, he then started playing more short, held it down on the Cape a little bit, held it down, I think, with when they would plug him around there in the fall, and then played short in his draft year and looked solid. And he's been getting nothing but looks at short pretty much professionally. He has the ability to be a fantastic third baseman, but the profile doesn't really scream that, right? Hit over power.
Yeah.
It's going to probably be fringy at best, probably below average power, but above average hit, good plate discipline. That's not really a guy that you want at third unless he's playing Brian Hayes level defense. And, even then you see what happens if the bat stalls. I don't think Culpepper's bat would stall like that. But no one thought Cabrian's would either at that stage.
Right.
I think with him, it's important to stick it short. And I actually think he has the ability to do so. Mm-hmm. He can throw from different angles. He's almost too comfortable throwing on the run where he should set his feet and doesn't. But he'll get more comfortable with that. The range is a little fringy, but the more I watched, it's nice to go in order from college all the way through professional. You saw the first step quicker. You saw him attacking the ball a little bit more. I think he can be an average shortstop, maybe even a little bit better than that, where if you're getting above average wheels, above average hit, and 10 to 15 home runs and plenty of doubles, it could be a solid everyday shortstop. If not, I think there's a lot of value in the versatility there where he could play a really good third, a really good second, and a fine short.
Yeah, his feel for the game in general, I feel like is conducive to playing a bunch of different spots. Like I would almost feel bad pigeonholing him in one spot. It's like, okay, specialize in this, because he's got it could be baseball IQ. It could just be like overall feel and smoothness to his game that I'm falling in love with.
Sure.
He's just a gamer, man. And we saw that in the regional too. He dominated a regional himself. And I mean, it seems like he's just a ball player through and through. And part of me wants that guy to bounce around the infield a little bit. Hey, Royce is hurt, play third. Hey, Brooks's back is a problem, play short. Julien, the lefties, in the game, play second. I like that because it seems like wherever he is on the lineup card, 1 through 9 in the batting order, or wherever he may be positioned defensively, he's just going to go play decent ball, man. That's, I feel like, how Kaelen Culpepper is best enjoyed.
Most likely. And I think the ceiling that you're hoping for is that the bat comes along and is productive enough and the glove looks good enough to where he can be that average everyday shortstop. But that puts a lot of pressure on him and it might be difficult. Remember, this was a thinner draft and he was a late first round pick. He's a very high probability big leaguer. And even his pro debut, he didn't light it up, but he ran an in zone contact rate of 93% and was much more selective. I think that's going to be an aspect of his game too, where he was a little bit more aggressive in college because he could get to everything. Can he be more selective? And I think he will. But yeah, I love the floor is so high. He's just a contact oriented guy with enough power that can move all over with a plus arm and good wheels. And that's why I think it was a great pick for them in the late first round. The ceiling may not be sky high, but they picked their spots to chase the ceiling, and we'll get to that.
For sure.
Number 3 is kind of a floor over ceiling guy too, but the ceiling pushes a little bit higher, and it's Luke Keaschall. He is still searching for that position a little bit too, but I have a lot of confidence that he will settle in somewhere. And it hurts when you have to deal with an elbow issue, and he was DHing for a lot of the year and playing first base because he was dealing with that UCL thing. And ultimately the Twins said, you know what? We think you could be up here, I think, at the end of 2025. Let's get this taken care of now. Let's stop with this. So he gets the Tommy John surgery. He's going to probably be DHing for the beginning of the year, and then we'll see where they place him defensively. A big problem with the limitations defensively were his arm strength, but how much of that was the fact that he was maybe throwing through a frayed UCL. So now that it's healthy and he's been rehabbing it, if that arm can even just be average, I feel really good about him in the outfield because I think the speed is there. His reads and routes are still shaky, but like he hasn't played a lot of it. But I also would feel good about him at second base, where then the arm would be solid enough. But it's definitely a guy that can play first, can get by at second, can get by in left. But again, as an above average runner, this guy was like a all-state wrestler in high school. Like, he's a good athlete. I do think that he can catch on as he gets the reps at other positions.
Yeah.
But this is the bat is the calling card here, right? Where you're getting above average hit tool, elite plate discipline. Any other organization, he's probably the best plate discipline guy. But there's a guy that we're about to talk about next who might have the best plate discipline in the minor leagues. Yep. But when you blend above average hit with 70 grade plate discipline, you're generally saying, okay, well, what is it? 30 power? No, this guy can get into average game power. And we saw that. Put on 10 to 15 pounds after the draft, adjusted his swing mechanics. We talked about that way back, where I love the setup changes that he made to tap into more power. And he hit balls harder his first 2 weeks with wood in 2024 than he did his entire college season with metal. There's career with metal. He's in a really good spot offensively, and it's just a matter of getting back and getting healthy and then figuring out what the defensive home is.
This is one of the few guys that is 50 all around. When you talk about, future tools, when you talk about, the 5-tool players, like very few 50 all around guys are top 100 prospects, but you need something to boost you. And it's the plate discipline coupling with the 50 all around game that makes him a top 100 prospect. Like, I don't think it's any argument that he's a top 100 guy, right? He's probably top 70.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think if it depends on how confident, we are in the defensive, progress here.
I feel like that's an arm health thing.
Yeah, I do too, especially because he can run. And the fact that he made these adjustments that he made, and it was a thread I actually enjoyed putting together too on Keaschall too, where the fact that he didn't really face any adversity, but still was like, there's some things I could do to make it better, and adjusted his setup, adjusted his pre-swing moves, and while adding strength and putting himself in a position to just do way more damage. And it didn't come at the expense of his fantastic swing decisions and feel to hit. Like, what else do you want to see? It was a hard hit rate north of 40% this past year. And that elbow thing could have been affecting him in the box a little bit too. So I'm excited to see what it looks like. The one wrinkle is just getting a little bit more consistent hitting secondary stuff, but he recognizes it so well that it doesn't become as much of an issue. I mean, he's high probability big leaguer, but usually a player of this archetype, you're not thinking that he can hit 20 home runs. He can do that too. And that's why for me, the comp that we're talking about, which is, probably stings a little bit for Twins fans, he reminds me of a more athletic Spencer Steer. So you could have a lot of the things that Spencer Steer brings to the table while potentially being able to get a little bit more out of the defense side of things. And on top of that, again, the power, 35% ground ball rate. So he's going to hit it in the air consistently too.
So flip side, Twins fans are not upset that Steer is gone, because why do you need Spencer Steer? We've got a more athletic Spencer Steer right here.
Exactly. And who would have known the trade would go exactly, how it went. But
right.
This is a guy that I do think does a lot of the things that Spencer Steer does. And I think the floor could be close to that. And then the ceiling is definitely higher with the athleticism and, the stolen base ability and just everything else he brings to the table. Does not miss a fastball either. And I think that's a really valuable aspect of what he brings to the table too.
Yeah.
Number 2, I've got little questions left about his ability, and it's just availability. Emmanuel Rodriguez has become one of my favorite prospects in baseball. And I think that says a lot because he barely plays. And in these short appetizer, it's like a tapas restaurant where the food is just absolutely incredible, but you're just left wanting more, and you pay the bill and you leave and you're still hungry. And like you'll go back because it's so damn good, but damn it, I'm still hungry. And if you made those dishes normal sized, I'd go every single day.
Yeah.
That like Emmanuel Rodriguez, man, I think checked the final boxes last year on the field of what we needed to see. He improved defensively in center field. He improved his approach, and he's always been elite plate discipline wise, but remember we always talked about the passive versus patient thing. He used to be passive. Now he balanced that as well as ever, where he was still picking his spots to let it eat, but he still was chasing less than ever. Elevating the ball with consistency, making enough contact. Stolen bases became a big part of his game in 2023, and he started doing that even more in 2024 until the thumb issue. I think he actually got hurt stealing a bag, and so the Twins were like, shut that down. He was on pace to steal 30-plus bags.
Yeah.
So we saw the defense progress to a point where I think people are too low on the defense. It's like, he can, plug in center, or, he can be average. I think he could be an above average center fielder. But I understand maybe you move him in favor of a better, like a plus defender out there, or you want to preserve the health. If you move him to a corner, he's a plus defender in a corner. No doubt about that. His average exit velocity was 94.7 miles per hour last year in 47 games. Yeah. Of MLB hitters with, I think minimum 150 batted ball events, that would have placed him 4th behind Aaron Judge, O'Neal Cruz, and who was the third? I put this tweet out last night. Aaron Judge.
Was it Jordan?
No, it was Aaron Judge, O'Neal Cruz, and one other guy. That's very obvious.
I'll pull it up.
That's ridiculous. His 90th percentile exit velocity was 109.6 miles per hour. He hit some balls that were outrageously crushed. And I understand he's going to strike out. He's going to walk so much, it doesn't matter. He struck out like 24 times looking anyways. And that's something that a lot of those Ks were not pitches in the zone. It's going to work to his favor at the big league level. I think his strikeout rate will actually, once he settles in, go down maybe potentially, or at least even out, because there's not a lot of success stories of guys that strike out 30% of the time at the big league level. There is when they chase 9.5% of the time. And that's what Emmanuel Rodriguez did last year.
Yeah.
It's, I think, the best plate discipline in minor league baseball.
The other guy is the pitcher for the Dodgers.
That Shohei Ohtani guy. Yeah. So average exit velocity was only behind, and I understand that he's doing it in the minor leagues, but still, it's just sheer EVs. Yeah. And he wasn't doing it at low A. He's doing it in double, triple. Only behind Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, and O'Neal Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
He hits the ball in the air consistently. He walked at a 24% clip.
Yeah.
This, again, wasn't in low A. This is in double and then even a little bit of triple. It's just a matter of health.
It's like his 37 games in double A are comical. 298, 479, 621 slash. He played 37 games. He walked 42 times. Like, are you kidding me?
He hits lefties well. He hit 303 against lefties.
You're a 21-year-old. Like, it's amazing. If he played 130 games last year, I mean, he's probably in the same conversation as number one in this system, and like 100%. Roman Anthony and all those other guys.
100%. And legitimately, I think the injury thing is the only side of it. Like, yes, of course, there's a little bit of hit tool concern for me, like that. But when you're that selective, this is the kind of guy that could probably punch 34% at the time and make it
be
work.
Awesome.
And because he's gonna get his, and he's gonna walk.
Yeah,
he could hit 220 and make it work, but he has the ability to hit better than that. Like, we've seen that. So also being good left on left, the fact that he can stick in center and steal 20 plus bags or be a plus corner, that makes it even more palatable if he's, swinging and missing a bunch.
Yeah.
I think he can hit 40 home runs. Clearly. I mean, you see the raw power stacks up. If he can hit 40 home runs, get on base at a high clip, and play good defense, it's one of the best players in Major League Baseball. Obviously, that's the ceiling. I think he probably settles in the 30 home run range because the hit tool may restrict him from getting into it that consistently. Walks at a huge clip and gives you value defensively and steals bags. Like that's a multi all-star and potentially close to perennial if it all works out. It's just about the health and then maybe a little bit about the hit tool, but I'd say 90 health, 10 hit tool. That's basically the ratio of concern here. And I mean, he's a guy that could actually be a difference maker for them at the big league level this coming year. And I know you might say, where does he fit in? If he's healthy,
you make space.
You make space.
You make space.
It doesn't matter. So I'm really eager to see him, play hopefully a full healthy season here.
Let me tell you where he fits in right now. I'm going to Fangraphs roster resource. I see Trevor Larnach is playing left. I see Matt Wallner's playing right. Thank you for your services, fellas. Willie Castro's the DH. Thank you for your services, fellas.
Yeah.
Again, aside from Buxton, I'm making space for this guy. And I think Wallner's going to be awesome this year.
Yeah.
But Larnach, see you, man. It's Emmanuel time.
And he's like an elevated version of all those guys. Like it's about like Wallner and the way that he hits the ball. Like Emmanuel Rodriguez hits it just as hard with way more athleticism and value beyond that. So I'm really excited from that side of things.
Yeah.
Another guy that would be great to see him put together a full season. He did end up playing a fair amount of games after a delayed start. Walker Jenkins is the number one prospect in the Twin system here.
Of course.
I think the gap is not that big between these two, but ultimately the floor is just so high for Walker Jenkins, and he still gives you the ceiling to dream on. There's two players that I'll throw out the Kyle Tucker ceiling comp on. It's Chase DeLauder and it's Walker Jenkins. And I know they're different, but they can both get there with the right, progress. With Jenkins, it's tapping into more power. He's 6'3", 215, and he's still just scraping the surface, I think, of what he can be power-wise. But the floor is so high because you have a plus hit tool, you have plus plate discipline, you have above average ability in center field, or another guy that can play plus corner outfield. He's an above average runner. And even if the power stalled out, he hits the ball hard and would just be a doubles machine and still could sneak out more home runs as he gets more just comfortable hitting the ball at the right angles. But I think it would be silly to assume that the power would stall out. I think his lower half was affected by the hamstring issue that probably sapped some of the power. He went nuts at the end of the year, finishing out in high A, and then struggled to get acclimated Double A, and then had a great final couple games at Double A. But his August was crazy. It's just a matter of finding another tick power-wise. I think it may be closer to above average power than plus, like we were dreaming on before. But this is a legit 5-tool player, like potential here. The only thing that we're waiting on really is the power, and the injuries have kind of held him back from doing so. He's still 19, by the way.
Yeah.
For another week.
He's 19. Yeah, I was going to say he's 19 until February 19th. So happy early birthday, Walker Jenkins. Yeah, honestly, looking at the headshot, I'm like, yeah, your power should be larger than, 55 present, because he's a big man. 40 present, 55 future. He's a big man. He's going to grow into 60 power, I think. And I mean, you've got 55 60s across the board. Dude, we're cooking with gas here. I do think, all right, so he's gonna open the year with Double A Wichita. Let me just pull up and we haven't done our top 10 yet. I'm just looking at the top 10 right now because Roman's going to graduate before him. Cruz graduating, Job graduating. Is he number one by the All-Star break?
He has a great chance to be the number one prospect in baseball. With a good start in Double A, how could he not be?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Carson Williams kills in AAA and Tampa doesn't get him up. But aside from that, it would be
his own org mate being healthy and destroying could actually. Emmanuel Rodriguez, I think, has a claim to it if he's just destroying in AAA.
But he would get up before Jenkins.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. That is true.
It's tough to find another. I mean, if Basayo or Mayo is still blocked, but even then, Jenkins probably gets the edge because he can play a good center.
His skill set's just so much better across the board. Yeah, it's a special skill set with still the upside of that 5-tool guy. But what I love about Jenkins as a prospect, like if I were running a team, is that of course I'm dreaming on the superstar upside, but if he stalls out, oh no, I have a plus hitter with plus plate discipline,
Right.
above average speed who can play center, and he's only going to hit me 10 to 15 home runs and a ton of doubles.
I have a really good 2-hitter.
A fantastic 2-hitter who can play all 3 outfield spots. Sign me up for that. The one thing to watch with him, he does a great job of repeating his moves in the box. He's such a simple swing. I love what he does. And I think it's just because of lack of ABs. Spin can get him slightly onto that front foot prematurely. Not enough to derail the swing, but enough to lose some of the power behind him and lose that tension. So that rubber band that you create with your load kind of ends up just tightening, or not tightening, almost like shortening back up again because he's pushing forward ever so slightly. So the exit velocities against secondaries weren't as good, but the chase rate was still low. Contact rate was still great. He destroyed fastballs, 331, 444, 540 slash line against 4-seamers. So as that comes along against the secondaries, I think the power will also tick up as well. This is one of the best prospects in baseball because of the floor ceiling combination. Hopefully he can play 100 plus games this year at AA. He elevates enough too, where I think the power is going to play up in the Texas League.
Yep.
That'll do it for this episode. We have the Marlins next week, which is going to be fun because that's Jack's new employer. So we're going to talk about the Marlins farm system, which is as deep as can be. And Jack's going to be overly critical of all of them.
Yeah, I'm going to be so mean about the entire thing. They also just added a starting pitcher. Did you see that?
No.
Cal Quantrill is the newest Miami
No
Marlins.
way. Someone called that in our replies on the Just Baseball show. That is so funny.
Cal Quantrill.
For the Just Baseball lore, people will love that.
Alden Gonzalez reported that as well. Yeah, Cal Quantrill is joining the Miami Marlins.
It's a great fit for Cal, actually. Good for him.
I love it.
Get the hell out of Colorado.
I love that fit.
We'll be doing that. But then on Friday, we're going to be doing top prospects or most relevant prospects, non-roster invitees.
Yeah, just kind of NRIs to watch. Like Connor Griffin's in big league camp. Like let's spend some time on that.
Giving you a watch guide and just kind of what to expect. And, just because when you're turning into a spring training game, you may not want to watch after the 6th inning when the starters leave, but you might remember, oh, wait, I was listening to the call-up. Connor Griffin's out there. You get to see a couple ABs maybe, in the back half of the game. So that part will be cool. This is great. I can't wait to bug Cal now. He's probably going to tell me I need to go get a tattoo. Again, Just Baseball lore. Sorry if you guys don't know that, but wow, that'll be fun. Looking forward to the Marlins system. It's as deep as it's ever been. So look out for that. And again, we'll talk to you guys on Friday.